Been a while. We are at Gillette Stadium. By we, for the folks at YouTube who can see, Doug is back with us. That has not been a while because we hung out all at the Combine and then just like brain dumped everything we had learned, which somehow feels like a month ago. But anyway, it is Thursday. We are at Gillette Stadium because today we had a rare free agency press conference for the Patriots. Milton Williams was here. Carlton Davis was here. Robert Spillane was here. And Morgan Moses, who wants to build a brotherhood and like has 2 kids and is talking about training them. And anyway, like I feel like I trust that man much more than I would a stranger who I just heard speak for 5 minutes. We're also here because the Patriots announced today, after it was reported first by Mike Reese and you and I confirmed, have released David Andrews, which was not completely surprising, but something we're going to spend a lot of time diving into first before we get to quick hits on all 4 of those players, as well as comments from Robert Kraft, Mike Vrabel, and Elliott Wolf. So again, it is Thursday. There's a lot to get to. There might be more tomorrow because there are more press conferences here tomorrow in this brand new world in New England. Without any further ado, have I missed anything?
No, Garrett Bradbury was released.
So, okay.
It's apropos.
So the news comes in, and this is important because we talk about David Andrews leaving, and you go, okay, this offensive line needy team that has no left guard, has no left tackle, now doesn't have a center, will need one soon. Bradbury, as you had heard, probably fits. Now he's on the market.
Plan to release if they can't trade him. The classic Cooper Kupp situation.
Oh, there we go. Oh, and we might talk a little Cooper Kupp, who's interested, but according to some reports, wants to stay on the West Coast, and the Patriots are intrigued. So I don't know. Of all those places, we should talk David Andrews. But where does your mind go first when you get home and Jen wants to know, how was work?
If she ever asked that, I mean, probably David Andrews, but like. I think today was just interesting because this isn't something that we're used to covering for the Patriots. Like they didn't used to hold free agency press conferences under Bill Belichick. Same thing under Gerard Mayo. We would sometimes get conference calls a few days or weeks later. So I would say that overall my thought on the day is that it should have probably been a day of celebration for the Patriots with all these big names coming in. Milton Williams, highest contract in Patriots history. But the Andrews release kind of put a damper on the afternoon, and it led to obviously questions about why'd you release him? What are you going to do on the offensive line now? That probably wouldn't have come to the same degree if they had released him either on Wednesday or after the press conference this week, whenever.
The timing is maybe not brutal, but it's strange and it's awkward because I would love to ask questions about Milton Williams. We did get a chance to chat with each of these guys. It didn't preclude us from discussing those guys, their additions. You had questions for Vrabel. Elliott Wolf did not take questions. Neither did Robert Kraft, which again tells you this is the Mike Vrabel show. But when a guy is a 10-year player, an 8-time captain, a 2-time Super Bowl champion, who as of now, it's unclear if he's retiring, in the language that Robert Kraft used in his statement would indicate like they're trying to celebrate him and retire and make possible. And if he does, they will hold a separate ceremony. It was just awkward because you have to talk about that guy. David Andrews deserves that. David Andrews was a bedrock through the whole Patricia offense, through the Bill O'Brien disaster the year after, everything with Mac and Zappi, the glue of this locker room, the glue of this offense. And it didn't feel unceremonious because, again, there were rumblings and whispers and he had a heads up. But it's very strange for now day 4 of free agency that you cut a guy at a position now suddenly of need who at least intended to play. Maybe his shoulders give out. I don't know, because then he has less time to sign with a new team and you have less time to fill an option, which they were in on some of the centers, as we wrote from the Combine, but obviously didn't sign anybody.
Right. I think that if anything, the timing of this maybe indicates that like maybe he is going to retire. Like we don't know. There's nothing set in stone at this point, but like you would think that if he planned to keep playing, he would have maybe pushed for an earlier release or earlier indication that he was going to be released so that word would get out to some of these teams that have already signed centers. But for the Patriots, like the move still did come as a little bit of a surprise because they didn't add any centers early in free agency. They were in on Drew Dolman. They were in on other free agent offensive linemen like Will Fries, like Ronnie Stanley, and they didn't land any of them. So then when you don't land any of those guys, there is an aspect there of you're thinking like, all right, maybe they are intending on keeping David Andrews. He'll be your center. Maybe you still draft a guy in like the 4th or 5th round to groom behind David Andrews. But now the way you're looking at it is they don't have a left tackle. They don't have a left guard. They don't have a center. They do have a right guard and right tackle, which is still better than they were last year, I would say, but barely, especially when you're looking at some of the internal names that you're like, I guess they've got Cole Strange who could play left guard or center. I guess you have Ben Brown who could play center. I guess you have Sidney So or Layden Robinson who could play left guard. And then at left tackle, it's like Vidarian Lowe, DeMontre Jacobs, Caden Wallace. So you don't want to go there with those guys. But, like, it's not like they've got great internal options that you can just slot in. You need to add players at those positions just in case those guys can't fill those roles.
Yeah, Karen Garigian, who was my first partner at the Herald, obviously local legend. Her first question to Vrabel up the top, and she's going to get a lot of first questions as we continue to kind of wade into the Mike Vrabel era, was like, look, do you feel like you need to draft for need now, given the state of your offensive line? You lost a captain and a center. And he said no, he thinks there's enough out there, which, again, day 4 free agency, it's not really true. Right. And it sounds, as we were talking off air, like echoes of what you heard a year ago from Drod Mayo and Elliot Wolf. Oh, we've got this great spot in the waiver order because we sucked so bad last year. We'll get players there. Maybe the draft. I don't know where this is coming from. Maybe they do trade for Bradbury, who obviously wasn't good enough because the Vikings signed Ryan Kelly from the Colts, and he's now their new starting center. Right. But the point is, you're running out of resources and time.
And I think the other thing here, too, is that, like, they say they feel like there's a lot of players still out there. Like Mike Vrabel was talking about, Alonzo Highsmith always talks about, there's guys who are going to be available in May all these times. We heard a lot of the same things last year. And I don't want to be too overly negative about what the Patriots have done this offseason, because I do like the moves that they've made. I like that they were aggressive right away. Any team with the roster the Patriots had last year would still have needs at this point. But it does feel like that old quote of, like, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Yeah. And, like, they had a plan of how to fix their offensive line. And then they did kind of get punched in the mouth by not landing, let's say, like Ronnie Stanley, Will Fries, or Drew Dahlman. They got Morgan Moses, so that's a good start. But now they definitely still need guys, whether it's Cam Robinson at left tackle, whether it is Garrett Bradbury at center. I still kind of believe that they could go into the season with a hole at left guard. Like, one of the guys on the roster could play left guard, or like one of the guys on the roster. Actually, no, one of the guys on the roster could play left guard. I don't want them to fill left tackle or center internally at this point, though.
No, you just don't have the bodies. Like, we watch the show, you have to do something better. Like, even if the options dry up, guys don't want to sign here. You need to find a solution. That's what your money's for. That's what the money in free agency is for, to go figure that out and throw it at players. And Mike Giardi and I went back and forth about, how much of an overpay, who cares? Is it the money that matters, or the opportunity cost? There is no opportunity cost right now. Right. And there will be no opportunity for this offense to get better if you still don't have offensive linemen. Last couple notes on this, because we'll talk more about David Andrews, who, again, deserves more, from the Patriots, and that will come. If and when he retires, they'll have a ceremony. There was a deluge of David Andrews support and tributes on social media today, which tells you they were very ready to go with this announcement. That said, right now it's a $4 million cap hit, dead cap hit. Who cares? They clear up 1.7 in space. Your options are, again, Ben Brown, maybe Cole Strange, and Jake Andrews, who's still hanging around as a 4th-round pick from 2023, who has played 0 snaps, or one game as a rookie.
Lacita Smith is still on there, too.
All due respect to Lacita Smith, who is definitely not watching the show. You were not counted for a reason. So the loss of Andrews also compounds, and they're going to replace a leadership point, because my question to Vrabel about this was like, hey, why is this in the best interest of the team when you keep talking culture? This guy's a winner, who's tough as hell, respected across the league, to let him go. And he danced around it for a little bit and cited age and durability and availability and the caliber of player, all these factors when you're building a roster. The leadership point, though, compounds the loss of Jonathan Jones and Dietrich Wise, who both went to the Commanders last night on 1-year deals. The Patriots are in it till the end with Jonathan Jones. I thought they should have re-signed him as a guy who's utility, play any spot in the secondary. He and I texted, he said he's in his good spot. He just needed a fresh start, and then he posted a statement. Is there anything more we need to add there? Like, they're going to miss the leadership. They feel confident they can replenish it. Jonathan Jones, though, is a guy I would have extended for. Granted, have a friendly relationship with him, but you don't find many guys that can play nickel, outside corner, and safety in a pinch. Yeah,
as far as the leadership aspect goes, I actually don't feel that much worse about the leadership that they have just from the guys that they brought in as I did last year. Like, there was a leadership void last year, and despite the fact that David Andrews was on the team, he wasn't healthy, so that didn't help.
Yeah, him and Bentley going down hurt that a lot.
Despite the fact that Jonathan Jones was on the team, he was still, though, like, not a captain. So I actually feel pretty good about, let's say, like Harold Landry, Morgan Moses, Robert Spillane, those guys as coming in as being like veterans who know what they're doing, who can be leaders on the team. It's just, making this move without a center in place, I just keep going back to it. It feels really risky.
It's weird.
It is. It's strange. And like, I know that like I've seen some fans display some level of confidence in, let's say, like Ben Brown or Cole Strange filling that role at center. Cole Strange, like, you can't though. Like Ben Brown, sure, if you really believe in Ben Brown from last year, good on you. But like Ben Brown was the center on the worst offensive line in football last year. Yeah. So like that says something. And Cole Strange played one game at center last year. Like you cannot slot Cole Strange in at center based on what you saw last year. It's just, you can't do it. It's impossible. Like teams go into years with more certainty than that. You can't go in with that level of uncertainty. So the unfortunate thing here is that, let's say like someone doesn't come available at wide receiver, left tackle, and center. Then you're entering the draft again with 3 glaring needs that you need to fill, and say like, okay, in the first round, we need to take a left tackle. We've painted ourselves in a corner and we have to take Will Campbell. In the second round, we have to take a wide receiver with upside. Otherwise, who knows who Drake May is throwing to. In the third or fourth round, we have to take a center, and we might even have to overdraft that guy to ensure that we land him. And then you're right back to where you were last year, where maybe you're not taking the best possible players. You're just taking the best players at positions of need in those spots.
So when we say this was supposed to be a joyous day with Milton Williams and Carlton Davis and Morgan Moses and Robert Spillane, who are overjoyed to be here because they're now multimillionaires, in some cases 10 times over, in Carlton Davis's case, the third contract.
Right.
But it's still weird. This is why.
Yeah.
Basic depth and decisions that they made that you go, we're going to talk about the guys and why they're happy to be here. And we're going to hit on them in a second, as well as the Cooper Kupp update. But it's just hard to figure for a team that had very clear needs that you kind of expanded these holes and missed. Like, you know what this was? This was step 2 or 3 in a plan where you completely whiffed on step 1. Like the release of David Andrews, we're going to do this after we get Dahlman, after we trade for Bradbury, after we maybe sign Will Fries. But you didn't do any of that. At that point, if you don't have step 1 in your plan, you need to pivot, to use a word, and write a whole new one. Right. They haven't. They seem to just kind of be marching into the future as if they had patched those holes or completed that step 1, and they haven't. It's a weird day.
It is. And I mean, I'll feel fine about the center position if they trade for Garrett Bradbury, because like maybe you trade for him or wait for them to release him, then sign him. Then you also draft the next center. Like I'm feeling fine about that at that point, but there's still so many other steps that you need to take at left tackle and wide receiver as well, that I truly do feel like it's to be tough to feel confident about what they have entering the draft.
All right. I mentioned a Cooper Kupp update, but first we're going to take a quick break.
Enough about free agency. Enough about the draft. No more mocks, no more rumors, no more whispers, no more mailbag. It is time to talk, not about football or anything like that. Prizepicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, because when I'm not on this podcast and I'm sitting at home and I'm watching the Celtics, or it could be a hockey game, or it could be a baseball game. Sox are just around the corner. I am playing Prizepicks and I am winning. And I would like you, as someone who supports this podcast, to win a little bit too. Because right now at Prizepicks, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash and run your game all season long. When you build your lineup, you know the deal. 2 to 6 players, all right? Every single time you go to Prizepicks, online or on the app, you'll see a player and they'll have a stat. And all you have to do with your lineup is pick the player, go more or less on that stat. It could be Jason Tatum 5 threes. If you think he'll hit him more than 5 threes, he's going to hit more. If you think Kristaps Porzingis will have less than 18 points, hit less. Boom. That's a lineup right there. So 2 to 6 player stat projections over at Prizepicks. Basketball, hockey, baseball around the corner. Of course, football will be back too. And when you sign up today, if you're a new customer, here's the best part. You get $50. 50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prizepicks. You don't even need to win to get the $50 bonus 50. You just have to play. So sign up today. Download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and you will get $50 instantly with the promo code CLNS after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game.
All right, enough offensive line talk. Cooper Kupp. So Karen Gregan, we mentioned earlier, Mass Live, has a report, very fresh, that says, yes, confirms the Patriots are interested in something. You knew, Adam Schefter reported, and they've had talks, but as is often the case, player wants a little bit more than the team wants to give. And so they're in a holding pattern with Kupp, who, you know, I talked about this with Mike Giardi earlier this week. He's curious about what it would be like to play here and to live here. And that, to me, if I had known about definitive interest in his part, I would have said interest. I think this rises on his end to a level of intrigue because there's a difference between gathering information about something and then pursuing it. So he, as I last heard, was at that stage. What's it like? How do guys like playing here? Houses, the area, what are you close to, whatnot. I'd still imagine a guy who spent his whole career on the West Coast, really his whole life, wants to stay there, but he is open. And I would still argue, convince him otherwise. Spend the money, bring him in, even if for just the example you're going to set for a receiver's room that we talked about all last year, needs an adult in the room, even if it's an overpay in year one and you give yourself an out in year two.
Yeah, I think it was Jeff Howe also put out there that like going rate for him seems to be around $12 million. I don't hate paying that much for Cooper Kupp. I know there's the injury situation. I know that he's older. I know that there's a lot of things working against it, but like the Patriots need wide receiver help. Mac Hollins is ideally a 4. Yeah. And you've got a bunch of 3s. So even if Cooper Kupp is a 2, that's better than what you've got. Like he's still going to be the most dependable target for Drake May in your offense. And not only that, like he adds a level of professionalism. He adds some leadership to the wide receiver room, which they really lacked last year. I'm sure that Mac Hollins already will bring that, being an older veteran player. Right. But like Cooper Kupp would add another level of that. And then I think that like trifecta of leadership where you've got Kendrick Bourne, Cooper Kupp, and Mac Hollins, like you don't have a lot of the issues. Plus Todd Downing is the wide receivers coach. You don't have those same issues that you had last year. So if I'm the Patriots and like, I'm looking at this as like, are we willing to spend $12 million on Cooper Kupp? I'm just going to ask myself, like, what's the alternative? Because I have to be really confident that I can trade for Brandon Ayuk or for T. Higgins if I can't get Cooper Kupp. And I would even still say that you can sign Cooper Kupp and then also trade for one of those guys. Like, it's not an either or situation. You've got the cap space, you've got the cash, you've got draft capital to trade for one of those guys, and you've definitely got the need. Like, they absolutely have the need to trade for either Ayuk or Higgins and sign Cooper Kupp on top of what they already have.
And we heard a lot about culture today. Right. Like, again, Morgan Moses had me inspired, front row of the press conference. I don't allow for that very often. It happened anyway. If you're paying or you're overpaying, you want some sort of, as I've called it a lot, residual value.
Right.
Like some sort of lasting impact. He's going to deliver that as a 5-time captain who, whether you draft Ted McMillan or not, but Jalen Polk's in the building, Javon Baker, you can't work any less hard than the guy at the top who's been there, won Super Bowl MVP, been an All-Pro, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, he's not that same player. But the on-field production is not all that you're paying for in this case and not all that you need in this case. Like, they could not be any lower when it comes to the receiver room, the vibes, the talent, the production. Cooper Kupp single-handedly improves all of that. It might take more, as we talked about a suck tax. If you're like, okay, well, if it's New England, it's got to be 14, 15. And then you have a different conversation. But again, the opportunity cost of paying him in year one, even year two, it's really nothing. Not to mention the trust and the development and the chemistry with Drake May being like, hey, this is how Matthew Stafford used to operate.
Yeah.
Here's everything I have. Here's everything I know. Here's everything I'll give you over the middle on third down. That's what you need for a guy who's going to block his ass off and fit from a culture standpoint. They should do it. They probably won't, which is the outside, again, of this very strange day where you're saying, like, they can do everything. They should do everything. And, of course, more likely than not, it won't happen.
It feels a little crazy. I know why they're in this situation. But it feels a little crazy that we're sitting here on March 13th in the year 2025, still talking about their need for a wide receiver and offensive tackle. Like, we're in a Groundhog Day situation. Like, and I don't know if they could have done anything more to trade for Ayuk last offseason or to sign Chris Godwin or to do any of these things. But it does still feel crazy that, yes, they've added a wide receiver and tackle in Mac Hollins and Morgan Moses, and those are good starts, but that they still need to sign guys at those positions or trade for guys at those positions.
And this Arif Hassan, who used to cover the Vikings, I think still does, has his own Substack, was acknowledging on Twitter yesterday, and I'm on the tee going to the Celtics game, and he's like, I'm not saying he sucked Cooper Kupp last year, but it's kind of wild how much run he gets on social media. And I just was like, man, when you watch and then rewatch and then break down every single snap of the Patriots offense for these last 3 seasons, it does things to you.
It's easy to say that when you watch,
Justin Jefferson
and Jordan Addison every year.
And there were other folks who were writers who have said, like, hey, Cooper Kupp's not good anymore. And the open rates are not good. Like some of the advanced analytics, some are good. He's top 30, top 35 in yards per route run. He's up there with DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill, and just behind T. Higgins. Looks good. In terms of separation, It's not there.
Right.
The availability, not there. But my point was, he will be the best receiver in years the moment he sets foot in Foxborough again. If he does, it should happen. But we'll see. Okay, let's talk about good players who are here under contract. Milton Williams was someone that Mike Vrabel said they had a really good vision for, and his speed and his power and his character and this and that. He's a $104 million player. He's 25. The way he spoke today gave me confidence that lives up to the scouting report of being a high character dude. Who's just like, look, quote, hard work never betrays you.
Right.
And that's a guy who's prided himself on his development from a third-round pick to the best player in an Eagles defensive line in the Super Bowl and NFC Championship game. I'm not there as like lock it in, guaranteed you're going to get the best defensive tackle, third highest paid, whatever.
Right.
But this was an encouraging day listening to him talk and see the vision for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike Vrabel was saying that they want to put him on the field more than the Eagles did. Yes. He was on the field, I think, less than 50% of snaps for the Eagles. You would have to assume that that would grow with the Patriots. He said that he wants to be a guy who can play all across the line of scrimmage. He's also like, one thing that struck me today is that he is young. Like, he came across as being a younger player than, let's say, like Morgan Moses or Robert Spillane or Carlton Davis. Like, not quite as polished, but like, he's a young player, and that's what the Patriots should be looking to add. And that's why he cost what he did. That's why he was a $26 million a year player. Is that, and someone told me this week, an assistant GM for a team, like, that's the tax for signing the youngest high echelon player in free agency. Like, there's a reason why Milton Williams cost what he did, and that's because he's 25 years old, still has upside. And there were some doubts from people that I talked to that he'll necessarily like live up to that contract, which is fair. That's typical for free agency. Like, he's a player that the Eagles didn't re-sign, but he's still the best player the Patriots possibly could have added this offseason. And he's the best young free agent who is on the market. So that's the going rate for that type of player.
Yeah. And again, things are said in press conferences every year, and then they're not lived up to. But for a guy who, yes, was in an environment conducive to development and pressure and pass rush, next to Jalen Carter, around the corner from Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis is around, Josh Sweat, obviously, who's gone. He still had very good efficiency metrics. Like, as best as you can isolate his performance from the environment he was in, he produced. And he seems intent on being, I want to be versatile, which you don't always hear. This is not a, Rafael Devers, I want to play third base or bust. This is a guy who's going to play and be productive as much as he can. And that's the point of the players you want to bring into your culture. Whatever talent, whatever potential you have, I want the guy whose attitude and whose work ethic is going to maximize that potential.
For sure.
Wherever it is. He seems to be of that ilk. We will see, though, when you become the primary focus of opponents' game plans, you have to play more and run defense. It'll probably erode some of that efficiency, but he's still good enough with that extra playing time to still produce when it matters most in the most high leverage downs. We'll see.
For sure.
Carlton Davis, that man was on the record saying, I'm not taking anything less before I sign this next free agent deal. I don't think he did. 3 years, $54 million, goes up to 60. He's also talking about, though, kind of a gravity to play for Vrabel, which is something we heard from other guys.
Yep.
And I think it was real. He also talked about Christian Gonzalez. Like, I don't know about you. I enjoyed listening to the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Kind of another, like, little more soft-spoken cornerback. It seems like he'll talk more than Christian Gonzalez. But it's like, it's a trend with Patriots cornerbacks where, like, Stephon Gilmore was kind of a soft-spoken guy. Darrelle Revis was kind of a soft-spoken guy. Christian Gonzalez takes it to a new level. But yeah, same kind of thing with Carlton Davis, but seems like a smart player. And yeah, he's really excited to work with Christian Gonzalez. He thinks that they can both, like, raise each other's games. What did Mike Vrabel call it? Cat cover between him and Christian Gonzalez, where like I got that cat, you got that cat. So it does seem like they've got another like vision for Carlton Davis. Seems like they think there's a lot of upside and potential there with him and Christian Gonzalez, and that like, yeah, Gonzalez will probably still be taking on a team's number one, but Carlton Davis is a really solid option to cover a number two. And who knows, like maybe in some situations, like, all right, let's have Carlton Davis take on the number one with safety help, and Christian Gonzalez takes on the number two. But I do think that that's a really solid 1-2 combination there at cornerback. And like, even at 3 years, $20 million per year, I was fine with it. 3 years, $54 million feels even better for a player like him.
It does. And you know what I like too is his just self-awareness of saying, hey, I know it's a rebuild. I want to leave a legacy here anyway, which again files under the category of things that guys say in press conferences they don't live up to. but that understanding of, hey, they're not going to win a ton of games here. He's familiar with the defensive coordinator, Terrell Williams, spent the year in Detroit, and he was also very careful of being like, I wasn't really a leader in Detroit. Not that I wasn't trying, and I don't want that to be misconstrued. Right. Yeah. And he's the self-awareness and understanding of where you are in your career, what you want, how you can get there, I think is encouraging. And we'll see. I mean, the health issues still are what they are with him, but in the very tiny little snippet that you got from Carlton Davis today, again, another encouraging kind of guy. Robert Spillane got the fewest questions, but had probably the coolest fun fact in that he signed his first NFL contract on Mother's Day when he was in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel, May 2018. Today he signs his richest contract ever in the NFL. It's his mom's birthday. Yeah, so she has to come to every home game, I would assume, since he's very close with his mom. Good for Mrs. Spillane. He's a guy, though, who, again, you talk about culture, and he was a captain in Vegas and worked through a lot of things, who said, look, this contract is not a result of anything but day after day after day after day after input. Like he had a very stoic, like true stoic philosophy about his work. And obviously it's paid off, and another health question guy, but he knows what he wants, knows who he is and how he got there. And that's something I think more players in New England need, of that kind of touch with reality about who they are and what needs to be done to get better.
I also thought it was interesting that he was asked by Taylor Kyles about, getting his hand on the ball. And like he does have a decent amount of like pass breakups, interceptions, that type of stuff for a linebacker. But he was saying that like he does like eyes closed training to get like to know where he is on the field without having to see it. I just like kind of want to see what that looks like. Is there like a blindfold involved? Are there goggles? Like, did he just literally close his eyes?
What was that movie with Sandra Bullock that went viral for the GIF?
Bird Box, was it, or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I might be.
That's like him at the 50-yard line in an empty high school field in May. It's just like whipping around with the bandana.
I'd be nervous that someone's gonna like prank me while I'm doing that. Like everyone leaves the field, leaves you out there or something. But I thought that was interesting, and he was another guy who had like maybe a little bit shorter answers with the media, which I think might have led to him having like a shorter presser than some of the other players. But obviously a guy that the Patriots really believe in, someone that is going to be a leader. Obviously he was a priority for the Patriots to bring in. They signed him almost right away. Rich contract for Robert Spillane, but he's what they want. And like for him, this has got to be kind of cool where like he has a rookie tryout with the Titans when Mike Vrabel's in his first year as a head coach. Like makes the initial 90-man roster, goes through preseason, gets cut, goes on the practice squad, spends some time with the Steelers and with the Raiders. And now this has got to be kind of like a little, I don't want to say like an FU because he didn't say this, but like for me personally, I'd be thinking like, hey, you cut me. Now you just signed me to a 3-year, $37.5 million contract.
Yeah, it was just the 1 year in Tennessee.
How about them apples? So he said nothing to that degree, but like that's how I might feel in that situation if I were him. It feels a little bit better to sign that big of a contract with the guy who cut you once.
And Mike Vrabel recruited when he was a high school player, and Vrabel was an assistant at Ohio State, which also came up with some other free agents in this class that they didn't sign. Right. But it's funny how those connections like that you can pull from. It's not even just his first year in the league and Mike Vrabel was a head coach, but he seemed actually grateful. That was another guy.
100%.
Yeah. But I do like that attitude of like no. I'm going to get a free car. We're going to keep adding like tiny little perks until you finally say no. But yeah, he's another guy who described Vrabel as a draw. And I think this kind of equates to 4 years ago when the Patriots spent a ton of money again, and you're asking guys like Jalen Mills and Devon Godchow and this and that. And again, money talks, that's the answer always. But secondarily, they were like, I want to play for Bill Belichick. Right. Yeah. There's a little bit more of that here now, plus the quarterback. This isn't, the Patriots at that time didn't have a quarterback. I mean, they had re-signed Cam, but everyone knew he wasn't going to be the long-term starter there. Got a quarterback in place. Vrabel's a guy that Morgan Moses is the last guy we'll talk about now, said, yeah, like you admire what they did from afar. Right. You appreciate that he played. You understand what he's about. When he talks to you, that confirms everything that you had thought and then some. Yeah. So I think it's important, but they need to build on that, which is what these guys are here for. Because as Vrabel said himself, we're going to have more players in the coming years, and they'll add to this. This is just kind of like they're attempting to reset a foundation.
If I were Mike Vrabel or any of the coaches in attendance, front office people, I would feel very good about Morgan Moses's retention in meetings, because like that was one thing that I really noticed about him is that like he was citing a lot of things that other people had already said in the press conference while he was up there. Like he kind of parroted Elliott Wolf about like Robert Spillane's a guy who had 140 tackles in 2 consecutive seasons. After the first question, he was like, I know you guys are going to ask me about like what drew me here. So he was listening to some of the questions and what other guys were saying. And like, I don't know, obviously anyone can do that, but it seemed like he was like really genuinely paying attention to what everyone was saying before him during that press conference. And yeah, really impressive. Seems like he's going to be a good guy to have in the locker room. Probably going to come in right away as a major leader. Like, someone called him like the old head. He'd prefer to be known as the OG in the offensive line room. But yeah, with David Andrews now gone, like he's going to be that veteran leader. And obviously maybe they'll bring in other guys who could do that as well. Like there are still some older players out there in free agency that they could bring in, but he was really saying that he learned a lot from, Tron Smith, and he learned a lot from Trent Williams, learned a lot from the guys that Donald Penn, that he was a younger guy playing under them. And now it seems like he's going to be able to pass that along to, let's say, a guy like, Caden Wallace or Layden Robinson, some of these younger guys who are in the Patriots locker room.
Yeah, you can see and hear why a guy who's 34 and still playing at a decent level continues to play and be around at a decent level. Like, again, the understanding, the appreciation of lessons from the vets, which some young guys are just like, how do you know, blah, blah, blah. And here, like, I've got all the talent. That's all it takes. He talks about his training, even when he met with Vrabel before the press conference and his kids are housing some candy. And Vrabel's like, yeah, enjoy. And he's like, no, we got training today at 4:00 to burn off that candy. And he's like, just let your kids be kids. Yeah. He's like, no, it's a family business. You got to stay in shape. And so I think, for the leadership part, because we let off with that, Morgan Moses will help. Yeah. And he signed a 3-year contract. Will he stay even past this year? I don't know. Right. But I think you can see why this guy is respected and productive and has held on longer than most. Not only just in the way he talks, which is also this is a layup for the social media team of the Patriots. Right. We're going to be a brotherhood. We're not just going to build a team. We're going to build a brotherhood. You're going to see it on Sunday and Monday and Thursday. We play for each other. Again, more stuff said in press conferences every year, everywhere. But for a team that prioritized culture and character, I think at least in the guys they presented today, that message got across. We'll see how things are if they fall to 2-5 and 2-6. But these are guys who were here for a reason, and it's not just the money. And I think they'll probably stick around. Anything we missed?
I don't think so. Elliott Wolf came out right away and addressed like the fact that they're not finished. They still have needs to fill, which is obvious. We talked about that a lot, but like at least they're aware of that. At least they're like coming out and admitting it. I still am like in a wait and see approach about how they actually do this, because I don't know, when you're talking about like a guy who's going to be available in May, like I don't know what kind of players, like, yes, it's possible they could still sign someone in May, but you would like to have some assurances about some of those positions now about who you can bring in and sign.
It's a weird day.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone's so, even Carlton Davis gets up as the first player who's being introduced, and Vrabel hands it off. Here's Carlton Davis. You'd expect applause, and half of us are media. We're not applauding. It's just we're here to do a job. Silence. He gets up there and it's like, I'll take some applause. Anybody clap? Anyone? Like, there are families, there are employees.
Families, employees, yeah.
There were plenty of other people to clap. This was not media doing anything that was unruly or out of character. It's just a weird day. Yeah. Anyway, the Patriots will press on. We'll have more on David Andrews and Cooper Kupp. Obviously, will come up unless there's a need for an emergency pod. This will be it for me for this week. But if you want more, listen to Pat's chat. Obviously, both of us on Twitter. What a great moon landing event we had here today, and that will do it for Doug and I. Next week, more Patriots free agency. We're getting an inside look at Carlton Davis, by the way, because Ty Dunn of Go Long TD, this awesome feature about Carlton Davis, who is a badass as you would expect. But that's enough for here for now. We will see you next week.